So, what I'm going to do in this talk is to really reflect on where we're coming from, what or how we've structured our activities, what sort of activities, innovations we've been engaged in, to give you an overview of all that's been achieved in that time. What are some of the big questions that we were grappling, and finally, how are we thinking of, or against what measures we're evaluating ourselves. So this conference, unlike last year's conference, is not a conference that looks at what we are going to do, but it's really a conference that looks at what we've achieved. Not that we've quite finished yet, there's quite a bit of dissemination and communication to do yet, but it's really a conference about what has happened and what we've achieved. Okay, let's start with where we came from. Really, the roots of ReMSTEP lie in a national concern at government level in all states and in the federal government for STEM participation in schools and in universities. And the concern has a number of dimensions, and this is the latest set of health figures, if you like, from the chief scientist. Now Alan Finkel, who replaced Ian Chubb, and it is of a number of kinds. Firstly, a concern that our competitive scores in maths and science are slipping internationally. Second, that participation has been pretty much uniformly dropping over the last 20 years in terms of the number of students taking up STEM careers. And a concern that really we don't have enough people entering the higher level maths that are going to prepare them for a future in a highly technological nation that Australia aspires to become. And so the concern is that we really get some excitement and some bite into secondary school science and mathematics in order to address those problems. And the answer there is really around bringing the teaching workforce along with us and to devise new ways of thinking about those subjects. This was a 26-country comparison report that was done a few years ago, which again looked at what was happening in other countries, and a lot of the partnership activities that were going on in other countries was part of that. And really pointed to the fact that Australia really needed a national agenda and a national push on this issue. And so if you look at a lot of the rhetoric coming out of that time, the argument has been that STEM is needed to really prepare Australia for a future beyond manufacturing, and that a part of the argument for that is that the future is with jobs in the STEM area. And these statements were made in 2012. If you look at a report from this year, earlier on, of the way employment and industry is going in Australia and internationally, it's very much focused on the notion that digital knowledge and STEM knowledge and flexibility of skills are the key to what we really want in terms of the capabilities that are coming out of our schools. And so you'll see with the dot points there, it's really about education and training becoming increasingly important, new skills and mindsets, new capabilities, and the changing importance of STEM. And it's rather interesting to me that increasingly the rhetoric is around not only just more of, but it's around the nature of what we do in those subjects. It's around flexibility and creativity and the sort of thinking that is going to prepare our students for futures where they're going to probably be changing jobs many times over a career, and they need to develop a set of skills that is flexible. And so if you compare that sort of rhetoric with a lot of the research that's been done in science and maths, and I'll show you some of the studies that have been done, what it shows is that in our maths and our science courses, there tends to have evolved a tradition, and probably it's a tradition that goes way back, and so in one sense, or in many senses, we're arguing for a repurposing of education in schools, A tradition in maths, for instance, of the attention to standard problems and standard knowledge sets rather than problem solving and flexibility. And this lack of autonomy that students have in choosing pathways to solving problems, where the maths curriculum tends to be very full and very scripted. And a similar thing you find with science, that if you look at studies of science, you find there's a lot of talk of students complaining about just having to get the right answers rather than really being given a chance to think for themselves, and the notion that what they learn in science is not relevant to their world outside school, which is a significant issue given all of the research that's going on in science and technology and maths around them. So somehow the argument is that we need to get this feeling back into schools. And this statement from the then Chief Scientist, Jim Peacock, made in 2007, I think, was really the first of a series of statements coming out of the Chief Scientists, that we really need to emphasise this notion of knowledge changing, of flexibility, and of bringing some of the work that's been done in the sciences into schools. Okay, so, oops, sorry, and that's an explicit statement by Ian Chubb. And so ReMSTEP really is part of that movement. It's based on an argument that in order to promote flexible and creative and critical thinking with students in maths, science and STEM generally, we are well served by having scientists and mathematicians linking with schools. Just as an example of this, the CSIRO runs the National Scientists and Mathematicians in Schools project, and we did an evaluation of this last year. And what we found was that in fact, the scientists and mathematicians going into schools brought quite unique skills and knowledges into schools. And a lot of it was not around simply topping up contemporary knowledge. It was about the persona of the scientists and mathematicians themselves. That in fact their passion and their curiosity and the stories they could tell around the practices of science and mathematics was highly valued by teachers and by schools. And a lot of that had to do with bringing teachers on board in long-term partnerships where together the teachers and scientists and mathematicians worked through school activities that better represented the contemporary thinking. And so in a sense what we're looking at is ways of bringing the scientific community, and I include mathematics in that, and the school community into alliance, and looking for ways, in fact, that those two communities can productively interrelate. And so the question is, how can we effectively translate contemporary research and practice into schools? And for ReMSTEP, it's how can we devise modes of interaction between scientists and, in this case, our pre-service teachers, although we've got a lot of teachers involved in the project as well there. And so to do this, the way we've broken up the project is around 7 innovations. And I'll flip through them fairly quickly there, but basically they are around 2 major themes. One is the bringing of contemporary science and mathematics to the attention and practices of pre-service teachers in pre-service units of study, and also linking scientists and teacher educators, science students and pre-service teachers in ways that bring the sciences and mathematics more to the fore in teacher education. Okay. So some examples of the things we've done, just a snapshot. There have been many projects over the 4 universities and many... sorry, that was my phone pinging. I'll turn it off. This one, for instance, is a partnership between Melbourne and Deakin Universities and the Melbourne Museum, where our students interacted with museum scientists around rocks, went on an excursion and learnt about museum scientists' work and around rocks, and that had some very good outcomes. This is an example from Monash where some of their top-end mathematics researchers developed video topics for school students. Here's one working at Deakin with the Institute of Frontier Materials, of which Maria is a leading light, and looking at translating that work into schools. Another one at Monash where they've got students, a unit devised where students spend time with scientists in a number of guises or a number of situations in order to change their understanding of the nature of science. We have a number of projects involving links with science specialist centres, for instance, Quantum and the Discovery Centre. La Trobe has been very involved with that. And we've got a number of examples of specialist science courses in primary teacher education. And lastly, we've made a series of products and strategies based on contemporary or leading scientists working in contemporary biology, in this case stem cells, and translating that into school activities. And that will be the focus of one of the sessions later this morning. But one of the big things across all of that, you'll notice, is the linking that's implied in that between scientists, mathematicians and teacher educators, and also teachers in many cases. So one of the big things coming out of ReMSTEP has been that notion of collaboration and partnerships across those disciplines. Okay, so really you can think of ReMSTEP as being an exploration or an investigation of different ways of attending to that major premise that we want to link contemporary practice back into schools and back into teacher education. So the questions that we're involved with are these. First of all, how can teacher education be enriched by these links or interactions? In what way can those research practices be used to engage teachers? So there's a question there about process. There's a question here about what particular challenges and what particular benefits or affordances are promoted by the different models that we go about doing this, what change school practices come from that, and what are the effective and sustainable models of collaboration. So one of the big questions we've been asking ourselves all the way along is around sustainability. And so what you'll be seeing over today, if you go to the various sessions, is really a number of variations on those questions and tackling those questions in different ways and a number of different answers. And we think we're in the middle of an evaluation process. Sorry, there was one more question related to communication. And at the moment, we're in the middle, really, of updating or expanding our website. We're looking at getting activities online and badging them. And so communication really is our focus at the moment. And a lot of, for those of you who are teachers, this project has been about teacher education, but I think you'll see from what I'm saying that it has huge implications for the way we think about school education. And so for those of you who are teachers, I'd urge you to look at what we're doing and look at the way we're working with our pre-service teachers and think about the implications of that, both in terms of when these teachers go into schools, how is their practice going to be different, what skills and knowledge do they bring with them, and also what of the practices that we've developed can be translated straight into schools and school students. In terms of the evaluation, there's the set of questions around which we're currently collecting data and preparing for our report, which is due in a month or so. And it is around a number of aspects. The experience of our participants, that's in terms of how productive they found the activities and the enrichment that's gone on. In terms of the quality of the resources and the number. The impact on participants, and there are a number of dimensions there. There's the notion of the cultural shift in the ways, as I say, we've ourselves interacted between the science and education faculties. Improved learning and engagement of PSTs. There's some change in their attitudes, change in scientists and mathematicians and science students' perceptions of teaching. Again, one of our programs has been to make teaching as a career and education as a worthwhile enterprise to become more upfront in the minds of the science faculties. And so part of that has been through the linking with science students, and part of it has been through linking with science academics. And finally, the shift in science and mathematics perception of teaching as a career, and really the efficacy of what we've been doing in incorporating all of these collaborative efforts into our pre-service teacher education practice. So, Maria is going to give her keynote in just a moment, but for the rest of the day what you'll be doing is choosing sessions. And so my challenge for you is, when you're in those sessions, have a think about first of all, the newness of what you're seeing, and the implications of what you're seeing for teacher education and for schools generally, and the sort of learning that comes out of it in terms of engagement with significant learning. And I think in each of the sessions, some of the outcomes will be presented, and so you'll be able to make some of those judgments. So we hope you enjoy the day. We hope you find it a somewhat novel and enriching experience. Thank you.